Okay, so hopefully I'm recording properly because I'm going to do everything in one big take and I'm not going to be checking this until after it's done, right? So this is going to be the very first introduction, I guess you could say, to my Blender course thing. This will be the only part that I'm going to put up for free, right? This should be free on the Patreon. I will look into uploading it on YouTube. That shouldn't be too hard. I should probably get that done as well. And yeah, so there's not all that much to explain. It should be pretty self-explanatory. This first video is going to be, well, for one, it's going to be long. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but I know for a fact it's going to be quite long. And um, you will learn the absolute basics when it comes to Blender and rigging in general. Now, let me make clear what this course is not. This course is not going to teach you how to do soft body rigging. This course is not going to teach you anything when it comes to simulations or anything like that. And this course is also not going to be extremely useful if you were looking to rig in other software. So for example, say Maya or some other CAD maybe. Because the information that you learn here, it applies to Blender and to my knowledge only to Blender, right? And this first video, this is the only one that's going to be free. It's not going to be very in-depth, right? These are just the absolute basics that I hope everyone can learn at least something from. But if you want to learn something that I would consider actually valuable, then you have to get with the course, right? And that's $10 a month on Patreon, or there's other levels of it, but you only need to pay the $10 a month version, and you get once a week you get an upload by me. It will be a video just like this, and we will slowly go through my knowledge of rigging and everything, which I will demonstrate in a second. That's why we had this gun open. You will learn all of that. You will learn everything that I know about rigging guns, and not just like a rifle. You have pistols, SMGs, you have rocket launchers, you have anything pretty much that I have once a week, every Sunday. I don't have an exact time, but every Sunday I will be making a video like this, where essentially I try to explain how I rig what I rig and how potentially you can apply this to your own projects. And if you are looking for a career in rigging, that'll be useful for you. If you're just looking to learn something with Blender, that'll be convenient too. So first of all, I'm just going to show you a really quick basic introduction to what you can expect from these videos, right? Or what you can expect to learn to have learned at the end of this course. What I'm about to show you, this is the level of rigging that you will have achieved once you finish this course, right? So this gun is by all means not all that complicated, in my opinion anyway. If I can just quickly get rid of that so I can show you guys this a bit easier. First of all, so I've just hidden the base of the gun just so you guys can see the internals, because that's really where the magic happens here, right? So we'll start extremely basic. When you have the safety on and you try to pull the trigger, it really doesn't go all that much. You switch it to single fire or full auto, doesn't matter. Now you can pull the trigger way further through, right? Then you have things like for example, the charging handle, right? So if I hide this, you can see here that this gun is special because it has two charging handles, right? So if I move the bolt back, you can see the bolt. If I move the bolt carrier, you can see the bolt rotates, right? It unlocks and it comes out. It also locks back into the barrel, as you can see there, right? Then you also have the spring that's compressing. You'll learn that. You'll learn how to make a spring compress in this very first video, pretty much. That's like a pretty basic thing. Then you have the hammer, right? This, as you can see there, it gets stuck here because it's on single fire and the trigger is not pulled. If I pull the trigger, then it's free to move and it'll go forward. I could show you the whole thing, but I think you get the idea. Then if, for example, the bolt carrier is back here, and then you pull the charging handle, of course, it's not actually making contact just yet. But when it does, then it starts getting pulled along. So that's another thing you'll learn. Another thing is if, for example, the bolt is back here with that charging handle, but you also use this one, then it will pull it along, if that makes sense. I think it's pretty good. It's hard to put it into words, but I hope the person watching this has eyes, and that should make this pretty obvious. Another thing is going to be your bolt catch. So this is your bolt catch. You can see I cannot activate it right now because the bolt is forward. If I was to, for example, use the charging handle to pull the bolt back, this goes for both of them, but I'm only showing you about this one. You can activate the bolt catch. And now if you reset the charging handle, you can see the bolt stays locked open. If I was to show you this, the bolt stays locked open. And then if I was to really quick engage the bolt catch, there you go. That flies forward, and it's only doing that because I didn't have it all the way forward at first. But if I was to do that again, you can see there, pull it back with the charging handle all the way. You activate the bolt catch. I said you activate the bolt. What? Oh, sorry, I had the wrong button. If you then activate the bolt catch and then you let this go forward, see that's caught there, and then you can just move that down, and that sets it forward. Kind of a rudimentary introduction, but I think you get the idea, right? You have other parts like the forward assist. This doesn't do much. It's just essentially there so the animator has an option to animate it if they wish to, right? So this will take a while to learn all of the little intricacies of everything that goes into this. That's going to take a while, right? You are not going to learn that within, say, a week or two. That's going to take, I would say, about a month in this course, maybe 2, right? And it completely depends on your current experience with Blender, whether I want this course to be something that, like, even if you've never touched Blender, it's at least digestible for you, right? But for a lot of people, it's going to be information that on the surface it makes sense, but it's really hard to apply it in your own projects, right? And that's completely normal. That's something that you're just going to have to learn, that you're going to have to get a feel for it. Now, I will help as much as I can. I will also, eventually, when we have more members, I will start taking submissions for people tricks, and I will try to fix them up and explain what's wrong with them, essentially, or how they can be improved, etc. So, what are we going to learn in this very first video? We are going to learn what rigging is for someone who maybe has never opened Blender, and basically why we need rigs like the ones I just showed you. Why do we have to put in all this effort to make something that complicated, right? And why can't we just make something rudimentary and call it a day? So, what is rigging? Rigging is, in my description, it is a way of taking a mesh, a model, and making it move with controls in a way that is intuitive to an animator. Now, let me make something extremely clear. A rigger is not an animator. There is a big difference there. For example, I am a rigger. I only rig. I am not such a good animator. I can animate, but that's a completely separate skill set. You don't have to be a good rigger to be a good animator, and you don't have to be a good animator to be a good rigger, right? And those skills are not transferable. If you have good skills in animation, you're a good animator. That does not necessarily mean it'll be an easy jump from animation to rigging for you. So, and again, in this, I suppose you could call it hobby or line of work, you are going to only find success in doing what you enjoy, right? Then the money comes after, right? Most of us in this business, in this hobby or whatever, we're doing it for the money, right? And something that I've noticed in my time doing this, you're not going to get good, so to say, unless you find something that you're actually passionate about and you work on something for yourself that's not for the money. That's how you'll actually find something that matters to you, that you're passionate about, and that you want to learn to such an extent that you get good enough that people actually hire you. Rent over. Okay, so here we have a cube, right? This is an extremely basic model. Of course, you're not going to be animating a cube. You're going to be animating entire creatures or weapons or cars or planes or stuff like that, right? But we all start from here, right? If you can understand how to rig this cube, right, you can understand how to rig basically anything. So every rig consists of either bones or empties. I would always prefer using a rig or when you're making a rig to use bones instead of empties. Why would I say that? Because if, for example, let's say I have empty, sorry, let's say plain axis empty, right? And I bring that to this face of the cube. Now, let's say I want to be able to completely adjust the cube, as in I want to be able to control every single face with one of my control points, right? With one of my control surfaces. Now, if I want to do that with empties, what do I have to do? I need to make 6 separate empties. You can see that in the hierarchy at the top right of my screen, which I am just doing real quick to show you. So if I want to do this with empties, right? Let's ignore the origin for the cube itself. That doesn't really count. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 controls, right? 6 options for stuff for it to control. That's all showing up in the scene hierarchy. This gets cluttered really fast, right? And in my opinion, it's also not, it doesn't give the neatest impression, right? As someone who rigs, you want your stuff to be instantly impressive at the first look, at the first impression of that anyone gets of it, right? Because a lot of rigging is not all that complicated, right? In my opinion, at least, because it makes sense to me. I have spent the time to understand the logic behind stuff. For you, maybe it's quite difficult, and that's perfectly valid. That's fine as well. And I hope with this course, you will learn that, right? But here, as an example, if you were to perfectly rig this cube and it does everything that you want it to, people still might not be the most impressed purely because it looks amateurish, right? In this business, see, you gotta understand something. Rigging is something not a lot of people understand outside of the 3D sphere, right? So you need to make up for that, because if you tell someone, oh, I'm an animator, most people, they would have some kind of idea of that in their head. If you tell someone I'm an artist, they would have some sort of idea for that in their head. Rigging, not really, right? There are many people outside of the 3D sphere that have never heard of rigging. They have no idea what it entails. So in order to make a good first impression, you make something easily digestible that's impressive at a first glance. Now, why did I go on that entire rant? To show you why I prefer bones. So keep a mental note of this, right? You have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 empties that are controlling all the faces of this cube. Now, if I was to get rid of all of these, right, and I added an armature instead. An armature, so this is something I should clear up right now. Think of an armature like this. You have a skeleton, right? I'm assuming there's a human being watching this video. You have a skeleton. In that skeleton, you have multiple bones, right? So you have your femur, you have your tibia, etc. One bone does not constitute the entire skeleton. But if something affects the skeleton, largely it would affect every single bone, if that makes sense, right? So why am I explaining this? If we look here, right, if I'm in object mode, right, and you can change your mode, but you can either press Control Tab, or you can click this drop down and you can select the mode. If I am in object mode and I press G, I am moving the skeleton, right? But the skeleton only consists of one bone. So it looks like I'm moving the bone when I'm not actually. I'm moving the entire skeleton. An easy way of thinking about it is like, imagine you're sitting in a car, right? You can move in and out of the car. That doesn't affect the car, right? But if the car moves when you're inside it, you're going to move with the car, right? So this right here is like moving the car. Now, how do I make this expressly clear? If I was to go to edit mode and I press Shift D, that essentially duplicating the bone, and I put this here, right? In pose mode, I can move this one separately. I can move this one separately. Let's say I put this one here and I put this one here. But if I go into object mode and I move it, suddenly both of them are moving, right? Now, why is this important? Why am I telling you all this? I have seen videos and I've seen rigs myself of people that instead of adding extra bones, right, they added multiple different skeletons, right? So each point on the cube in this example would be a different skeleton. I don't have to, I really hope I don't have to explain why that's a problem. Because if you're going to do it that way, right? If you're going to have a different object in the hierarchy, because the armature is the same way as the empties, right? If I add a bunch of them, they all show up in the hierarchy. If you were going to do that anyway, you might as well do it with empties, because empties, by an empty, I mean these things, these plain axes, right? They show up like this. They're just a dot, right? If they're showing up like this, it's because you have extras enabled. I just don't. That's just my workflow. But yeah, that's what I mean by empties. When I say empties, I'm referring to that, right? So what you want to do in this example is you want to control each face of this cube with a bone. So what you're going to do is, if you go into edit mode with a model selected, you have multiple different options. You have vertices select, edge select, and face select, right? If I want this face controlled by bone X, we'll call it bone X, right? Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to press Shift S and cursor to select it, right? That's right there now. I'm going to go into the armature and I'm going to move this bone in edit mode. Why am I using edit mode? I'm using edit mode to only move the bone. I'm not moving the skeleton, right? Because I want just this bone to control this face. I don't want the entire skeleton controlling that one face, right? So what I'm going to do with my bone selected, I'm going to come up here, set this to individual origins, and then I'm going to press Shift S, selection to cursor. And now you can see right there, we have the bone snapped to that face on the cube. We're going to repeat this for these 6 faces of the cube. So I'm going to go in edit mode on this skeleton, right? Now, if you want to add another bone, if you press Shift D, it duplicates whatever bone you have there. Or if you press Shift A, if you press, I changed my cursor. If you press Shift A, it's going to add a new bone at the position of your cursor, right? Then what I like to do, if it's because I want this to be facing that way, right? So what I can do, I can press Shift S, cursor, selecting the cursor. The bone looks like it disappears. That is because the head, right? The head and the tail of the bone are on the exact same coordinate, right? Think of it like this. If you have a car, right? And the car is, say, 20 meters long, right? Or 20 inches long, doesn't matter. I don't speak a metric. I don't speak imperial, right? You have a car that's 20 feet long. Now, if you were all of a sudden to squish it that so much that it was a 2-dimensional object, suddenly you can't see it anymore, right? From certain angles, because it's a 2-dimensional object. The same thing's going on here. The length of a bone, obviously, is dictated by the distance between the head and the tail. But if there's no distance between the head and the tail, right, which you would get by setting the head or the tail to the same coordinate as the other one, it would seem to disappear. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do Shift S, selection to cursor, and then I'm going to press G, and I'm going to press Y. Now, why do I press G? Because basically, even when the bone seems to disappear, I still have the head selected, right? So when I press G, I'm still able to control it. So the reason I'm trying my best to go extremely slowly, because I know that I have been doing this for a while, and for me, this is common knowledge. For you, perhaps it is not, right? And I'm going to do my best in this course to be thorough and at the same time not extremely slow, because this is in my experience, or in my opinion, This is an art. Rigging is, in my experience, is in my opinion, an art that very few people choose to perfect, right? Because many reasons. Because maybe it's not the most interesting to a lot of people, or maybe it's just not where the money is a lot of the time, right? So we have 6 bones, each to a different face on this cube. Now, again, just to clarify the difference between a skeleton and a bone. If I'm in object mode and I press G, I'm moving the entire skeleton, right? If I go into pose mode or edit mode, I'm just going to explain it in pose mode because it's easier. I can move the individual bones. Now you can instantly see why this is better than having empties. It's the same thing, right? You still have the exact same amount of control, but instead of 6 things in the scene collection, you only have 1. And this gets much easier if you're, like, say, for example, you're working in a scene with a character and a vehicle, for example, or a jet or something, or a gun. You would have all of the empties of the character separate, all the empties of the gun separate. That gets complicated, right? With this way, you just have one thing, right? And you can easily rename it. Instead of renaming 6 different empties, you're only renaming one thing. Now, let's say we'll call this one bone A, right? So I'm pressing F2 there. I'm pressing F2, and that changes the name of the selected bone. Let's call this one bone A, right? Then we'll call this one bone B, this one bone C, this one bone D, this one bone F, and this one bone G. I might have missed a letter in there. It's fine. Okay, it's fine. Now, I want each face to move with its specific bone, right? This is known as skinning, not the kind that you would come across in hunting, but skinning, in its most basic terms, essentially means taking a model, taking a rig, and assigning information to the model such that it moves with the rig, right? So, how are we going to do that? There's 2 ways to do this, right? I'm going to show you both ways. First thing that you could do is you could go, okay, I want this face to be separate. I want this face to be separate. I want this to be separate, this separate, and this separate, right? And then what I want to do is, okay, I want this part, this face, parented to this bone, or parented basically means moving with, right? I want this moving with this bone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, right? So it's selected. I'm going to hold shift. Then I'm going to click on the skeleton. This is still in object mode. Then I'm going to press Control Tab, or I can just go up here and go into pose mode. Then I'm going to select this bone because this is the one that it corresponds to. We're going to press Control P, and we're going to go bone relative. The difference between bone relative and bone is not important this early on, but for 99% of people, just go bone relative. It's fine. And make sure that you have keep, if it's messed up for whatever reason, just make sure keep transforms on. Maybe that'll fix your problem. So, in essence, right, that works. This face now moves with this bone. Then you can do that subsequently with every single bone, right? So there, then with that one you have there, take this one there, that one is there, and this one is here. Now fundamentally, right, if you were to look at it, if I was to change this to median point, fundamentally that works. That's me. What's going on there is I've selected all the bones and then I'm just scaling them up, right? Fundamentally that works. Each face moves with its own bone. Most people, right, would call that quote unquote rigged. I would not, right? Why? Because I defined skinning as the act of taking a model, taking an armature or a skeleton or a rig, right? And adding information to the model such that it moves with the rig. You haven't really done that here. This may be perfectly fine for some basic rigs, right? This may be perfectly fine. Say, for example, you're rigging a bottle, like a water bottle, and you just want the base of the bottle to be one thing, and you want the cap to be the other thing. That's perfectly fine. You can totally do it like this, right? And it may even be easier. But I would not consider this a rig. Why? Because you haven't really, in my opinion, done what a rig entails. What you've basically done here is you've butchered the model into different parts and then you've strung it up like a puppet. It seems to work, right? In by the most literal definition of the word, it does quote unquote work, right? But if this is the only type of rigging that you know, you are going to have a ton of problems in your rigging journey. What I would suggest all of you remember or learn is if I go back, right, and I get the cube back, I can just do that by going into object mode, selecting all these, Control J, boom, and by distance, okay? So we have the cube back. We have the basic cube back. If I go into edit mode, I select, let's say this face, then I come down here to the data properties. Here we have something called a vertex group. A vertex group is a way of separating parts of a mesh within a mesh itself. Now that might sound a bit complicated. What do I mean? So let's say you have a piece of paper, right? And you make 3 boxes on that piece of paper. One is red, one box is green, and one box is blue, for example. The paper, there's still just one paper, but now you've separated that paper into 3 different sections or 3 different parts, right? That's what we're going to do here. If I was to do something, for example, if I go into vertex groups, I press add, this will add a new vertex group. By default, they have the name group. If you double click it, you can change it. I want this face to move with this bone. What's the name of this bone? I remember it's bone A. So I'm going to give the vertex group the exact same name down to the capitalization, down to the spelling, down to the amount of spaces. This is extremely critical. This is one thing that everyone who starts this course, right, if this is a bad habit of yours, right, you need to fix it now, right? So we know that the first letter is capital. We're going to call it bone A. If you don't trust yourself to do this, there's a different way to do it. If you select your bone, if you select your skeleton, go into pose mode, you select that bone, you press F2, you by default the name is selected. You can just press Control C, you go back to the object, you double click here, and then you press Control V. It's the same thing, right? Here it doesn't really make sense to do that, but as you go on and you have rigs that get more and more complicated with the names that are, they contain more information than just bone A, bone B, bone C. This might very well be something that's useful to you. This might very well speed up your process. So you've assigned it to a vertex group. You've created a vertex group, but it's not assigned, right? You're going to select the face and you're going to click assign. Now, if I select the cube, you see this symbol here? This means that the cube has a vertex group. It doesn't mean that something has a assigned vertex group. It just means that a vertex group exists, right? So if I've selected the cube, I'm going to hold Control. I'm going to click on the armature. I'm going to press Control P, and I'm going to select armature deform. Right now, if I move this, look at that. Right, the entire top part of the cube, or the top face of the cube, is moving with this bone just as I want it, and I can scale it up. I can rotate it. I can do whatever I want with it. Right. Now, and notice, if I move the other bones, nothing happens, right? It doesn't make a difference. Now, if I was to do the same thing, so this is bone B, I go into object mode, I select the cube, make a new vertex group, call this bone B, right? And what I basically did there was I created the group, I assigned it, and then I changed the name after. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing, right? And I assign it, and then I move this. It's the same thing, right? This then moves with the face moves with the bone, right? Why is it better to do it this way? Is a question that I get often. Number one, this is reversible. What do I mean by that? Let's say I do this and I do that. And now I want the original cube back, right? What I can do is I go to object mode, I click on the cube, modifiers, and I click this button. Look, the cube's back, right? The entire reason that the cube deforms at all is because of this modifier, right? So, in a sense, if you didn't want the cube to work like this, you could just remove it and you have the cube back, right? Or if you say, okay, that's exactly what I want, but I want this to be baked to the geometry of the cube, right? Because you got to remember, the cube only appears to you this way. The geometry of the cube is still the exact same. This is still the geometry of the cube. It just appears this way, right? But now you want to make this the actual geometry of the cube. What you can do, you can come down here and you can click apply. And now the cube, it's no longer the original cube, right? This is now the cube. This is now the new geometry of it, right? This is especially useful if you're modeling something, right? And you want if for example you have wires in like a bomb, you're making a bomb, like you're modeling a bomb, right? And you have the various wires coming out of the motherboards and stuff, and you want to get them perfect with a rig, and once you're happy with them, you can just apply the modifier, and now it's part of the geometry. That's why this is useful. Alternatively, you can apply it as a shape key. Now, to apply it as a shape key, you're going to have to come down here first and click this to add a basis. Basis basically means that the software knows, or the software basically, it has a 0.0. It has a starting point, right? Then you're going to come here and you're going to apply this as a shape key. Now, the cube goes back to normal. If you come down here, you can see there's a new shape key. And now you can change that. So you can change how much you can basically change how much the cube is affected by the rig, right? Or you can choose anywhere in between. Either way, that's not what we're here to teach. We are here to work with this, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the cube. I'm going to add the vertex groups for every single bone, right? So what we're just going to do, go here, that's bone D, right? Does that work? There you can see that works. I'm going to do the same for bone C. There you go. And if you want to adjust the sequence, it doesn't matter. The sequence doesn't matter, but you can click this to move them up or down. And if you lock them here, that basically means that you cannot adjust which vertices are assigned to a set group, right? So I just did that for bone C. There you go. That one's already working. Does this one? No, that was not working. So we're going to apply for this one as well. There you go. Assign. There you go. And is that all of them? No, that was not working. And there you go. Okay, I missed E, but it's fine. It's fine. So there you go. That works. This I would consider a quote-unquote rig, right? Is this particularly useful in this example? I would argue not really, because these, of course, you're just learning the basics right now, right? Um, Ask anyone who plays any sports, right? They go to the gym and they lift weights, but they don't lift weights because in the actual, like if we take soccer as an example, right? You you don't soccer players, they train with that weird elastic band around their feet, right? But they don't actually bring that into the game. The elastic band is just there to provide resistance, is to provide training wheels for them, right? That's what this is. On surface value, this information is not very useful, right? You can't do a whole lot with this. However, if you understand this as a basis, you can do a lot of things, right? Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, I'll I'll just pull a random gun from here. Actually, I'll explain this with a melee weapon. Let's say we have, sure, this thing, right? I have this knife. I want the blade, right, to be extractable, or not extractable, it's like retractable. I want it to be magnifiable. I want it to be scalable, right? Now, we can't do that particularly easily here. But let's say I add in a skeleton, right? Skeleton armature setting. I add in a bone. I call this one blade. And then I add in another bone. I call this one handle or root. Sure, call it root. Then I go to the knife mesh. Then I select the parts that are the blade, right? And that's perfect. There you go. And what else down here? Those and those. Does that work? Yeah, that works. So I assign this to blade, and then I press Control I and I assign the rest to root, and then I parent it like so. Sorry. Now, right? Oh well, this was a completely random example, but as you can see, like I can do that now, right? And that was extremely fast, right? It looks kind of stupid, but you get the idea, right? You get how this could be useful, right? If you had to do this with just the mesh alone, if I was to do that. Now, I am lucky enough to know a decent bit about modeling and stuff as well. But just because you know something about rigging doesn't mean you know something about modeling. Just because you know something about modeling doesn't mean you know something about rigging and so on. If I was to do that in edit mode, for example, I'd have to, well, I can get pretty close to the actual work. But as you can see, this is not reversible, right? I have no way of reversing this. Even if I remove it, there's no way of reversing it. And that means if I make a mistake and my undo steps don't cover that, well, I have to start over. With the rig, you don't have that option. You don't have that problem. That is why I would say that this is a decently lucrative and a decently useful thing to learn, right? Now, we are at the end of this very first video, right? This very first introduction to rigging. However, if you've stuck around this long, I want to show you something. I want to show you, because I think so far I haven't shown you something all that awe-inspiring, right? I'm going to show you something now that I hope that whoever you are, whoever it is that's watching this video, I hope that when you see this, you think to yourself, damn, I want to make that. I want to learn rigging to make something like this. And that is this jet, right? Now, this entire thing is quite complicated, right? This took me 7 years to learn, or even more probably. I don't remember the exact time. I have more than 3,000 hours on Blender. It's taken a while to get to this point. This rig, the absolute basis of it is what I just taught you. without that earlier 30 something minutes of knowledge, you cannot even begin with this, right? For example, this entire front gear system, you can go up and come down. It can go left, it can steer, go left, go right, and it also has suspension, right? That doesn't work if I don't know how to make the wheel move with its bone, right? Same with this, right? I can move that, I can move it up here and then rotate that. It doesn't make a difference, right? All of this is useless if I don't have the base info, which I just gave you guys. Same thing with the rear gears. They come up, go down. You can move, you can move multiple at once if you want to. There you go. It's the same thing. Then you have the stick control up here, right? At the end of this entire course, you will be able to make something like this, right? I'll show you the rudder. That's the rudder. You have your slats. You have your air brakes. There you go. They're at the back. There you go. You have the nozzle. The nozzle constricts and dilates, right? What else do you have? That's the turbine on the inside that spins. You can hardly see it, but it does spin. There you go. And you have the canopy, right? So it can open and close. The reason it goes down a bit more is because if you look on the inside, right? If I was to show you this, it comes down and it locks in the inside. You can see that there. The hooks engage, right? And party piece, every single button and dial in this thing works, right? So you have the parking brake, you can move that, you can have the brakes channel, you have the landing gear. That doesn't actually, that's not connected to the gears, but you can have it that way. You have all of these, like, you have the audio lights, you have these switches, you have these radars, you have the throttle, right? So you can see that there. Right now it's in the fuel cutoff. You bring it forward. You bring it forward, and there you go. Now it's activated. Now it doesn't go all the way back. You have to activate the throttle lock. Then you can rotate it up, bring it back, let go of the throttle lock, and then you can bring it back to its original position. This is hard. I will not sugarcoat it. This is extremely, extremely difficult, and this takes a lot of time, and this takes, above all, a good model, right? You will not always have a model that is good enough for you to do a rig like this, right? But if you know your basics, if you work hard, right? And hopefully, if you go through this whole course, at the end of it, you will be able to create something like this. I'm telling you right now, right? I don't know how long into the course it'll be, but there will come a time where you and I both, we will sit down, we'll take maybe 3 hours, and we'll rig an entire plane like this. Side to side, we'll both will have the same file open. There'll be a video, and you can just follow that along, right? So that is the conclusion of this very first, I suppose you could call it, introduction to rigging, right? I know it's very surface level. Again, I need to set a basis for the people that are going to be doing, or the people that are going to essentially be taking this rigging course, right? Doesn't matter who you are, if you've never touched Blender a day in your life, right? It's all Greek to you. It doesn't matter, right? I personally will do my absolute best to digest all of my information in a package that is digestible. I will do my best to make sure that the information you learn is useful and it's actually something that's worth paying $10 a month for, because $10 a month is not nothing. That's a decent bit of money, right? And I'm grateful for every single dollar that you guys would choose to support me with, right? Because this is nothing without you guys. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this was useful. If you have any questions, my Discord is I'm not Acer. All together, no caps, no nothing. You can just find me there. Or this is going up on Patreon. right? You should just be able to leave a comment, and you can reach me that way. I will answer any questions that I have the time and ability to, and you will constantly, for the people that pay, because this is the only, again, this is the only episode that will be free, right? For the people that pay, you will have a new video coming out every Sunday, right? The timings might be a bit but you'll have a new part in the course coming out every Sunday. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.